Lee's, the YouTube channel dedicated to helping you visit Alaska this year or any year in the future and have the most accurate and up-to-date information possible. And you might explore other parts of the country too. I cover those in some of my other videos, but today I am so excited. I cannot explain to you how special the place in Alaska that we are talking about is to me. So, little backstory before we jump into our presentation. I grew up in Alaska, as many of you who are watching know, and I worked for Holland America Line for 3 years as a high school and college student. Very, very normal thing. Lots of college students do it. And my third and final year, I worked up in Denali. And so I got to live just outside Denali National Park, and I got to spend my weekends going into the park, exploring, hiking, and just relishing the beautiful wilderness that is preserved in that area. And so it has always held a very special place in my heart. And I am always excited to get people to figure out how to visit Denali, because it's not like normal parks in the lower 48. And that's part of what makes it special and part of what makes it wild. So we did a video like this a couple years ago with a colleague, I would say, of Sharon, who's joined me today. He's no longer in the role that Sharon is now in. And so we have a brand new face joining us to do a video talking about Denali National Park, everything you need to know about visiting ever, but also specifically about 2023, because as you may know from researching, things have changed in the park in the last few years, and it can be even more complicated to get your head wrapped around. So very, very excited. We are talking all about Denali National Park. Now, one quick 2 points before I jump right in. First of all, we are not diving a whole bunch into the Denali area outside the park, meaning we're not going to be talking about hotels, restaurants, tours that happen outside the park. I've got a ton of resources on my site. You're welcome to ask those questions either in the live chat or in the comments if you're watching the replay, and I will answer them there, but we're not going to get into that in this video. And then, as I just said, if you have any questions while Sharon is chatting, please drop them into the chat if you're watching live or in the comments below, and we will get them answered for you. If I can't answer them based on my experience and knowledge, I can always reach out to Sharon and have her or someone on her team come back in to help us. So anyway, long intro aside, I'm very excited to turn it over to Sharon to tell us more about Denali National Park and how to visit this year.
Thank you so much, Valerie. I really appreciate it. I have to ask, what position did you have when you worked in Denali?
So I don't know if in my brain, the acronym is CSSR, which I think is customer service and sales representative. So I worked at like the office,
Oh,
but part of
okay.
that meant I got to do a lot of the tours because I needed to be able to know what I was talking about. So I got
Oh,
to
sure.
see everything Denali has to offer. It was an incredible summer. And if you're watching at home and you have like kids or grandkids, get them to do a summer up in Alaska with one of the cruise companies. It is a fantastic way to get some work experience and see more of Alaska. Okay,
Yeah.
well done.
Okay. Yeah. I have to say, as someone who is a fairly recent transplant to Alaska and specifically Denali, it is a great way to learn and experience a park. Well, hello there. I am Sharon Stiteler. I am the Public Affairs Officer for Denali National Park and Preserve. Basically, my job is if you ever see an article about the park and they say, park official said blah blah blah, I'm the park official. Also, if you get naughty with a bear in the park, I'm the one that gets to write the press release. So follow some of my tips in this video so I never have to write about you. So Denali National Park has been in the news the last few years. We've kind of been a spotlight for climate change, but and we'll talk about that a little bit, but it is still an amazing and fantastic place to visit. Just right away, I'll show this slide again. Valerie, if you could go to the next slide. I just want to get some resources out there for people, and I'll have this again at the end. But if you need to get some information, we have an exhaustive website, and I'm going to cover some of that information here because if you're anything like me and you read it for the first time, you're like, whoa, that's a lot of information. But hopefully I'll be able to help point you in the right direction for some of the information you need to have. But nps.gov/DENA, that's the code the government has for Denali, will help you start your trip planning. I also want to encourage you to download the free National Park Service app. It gets you a lot of information, especially while you're visiting. And one of the things that I appreciate about it when I've used it when visiting parks is that you can download all the information for that park so that it's on your phone. So if you find yourself in a park and you have a question about a trail location, if you already have it downloaded, even if you do not have cell service, you can still access quite a bit of the information. And it's a free app, and it's fun, and it works for all national park sites in North America. I also have included in here our Denali info line. We have rangers that staff that daily who will answer your emails or forward it on to the appropriate staff member who can help you out. So that is a resource for you to have. And then just to let you know, I am a federal employee, so I can talk to you about all the things specific to Denali National Park. But as a federal employee, I am not allowed to recommend any businesses outside of the park. And that gets tricky because one of the places in our park is Kantishna that has a lot of private businesses that operate within our park. So if you'd like to learn more about businesses and outfitters and things that you want to do, like for example, I personally love to ride my bike on some of the trails in the front country. Since I live in the park, I have my bike there, but maybe you need to rent a bike or something like that. DiscoverDenali.org will help you find those outfitters and resources that you might need for visiting our park. Okay, so next slide, please. All right. So we had a slight problem in the park. This is, if you've been to the park before, the Pretty Rocks area. It's at about the halfway point in the only road in Denali National Park. Our only road is the Park Road. It is roughly a 90-mile road, and at the midway point, the road was built over a rock glacier about 100 years ago. And a rock glacier is essentially a glacier that is more rock than ice, but it does have ice. And because the temperatures have been gradually going up, the rock glacier has slowly been melting, and the road has now slid away because it melted. And this is a picture that I took this past summer in July where you could see the slide. Some people were able to hike up to it. And we are now in the process of beginning to build a bridge over that. But for right now, you cannot get any further than mile 43 on the Park Road. But I want to assure you, there's still plenty of amazing things to see in the park. Next slide, please, Valerie. Denali National Park and Preserve is roughly the size of the state of New Hampshire. So there are plenty of places to go. There's still plenty of places to see the mountain. If you're someone who really wants to climb Denali, that our Talkeetna Visitor Center is still open. That's still an option. We have amazing programs that happen, and you can still do quite a bit of off-trail hiking in the park. And you can even do the backcountry units. You just have to hike around the slide instead of just taking the road through there. So you still have quite a few options for having a spectacular trip. And that can include these spectacular views. This is a picture that I got last summer when I was biking around Sable Pass on the Park Road. And so you can still see that. We have Party here, one of my favorite sled dogs. So, and I'll talk more about visiting the kennels. And by taking some of the transit buses out, you still have chances to see wildlife like these doll sheep that we have pictured here. Next slide, please. But since it is a very large park and it can be overwhelming, it's not necessarily a park like some other parks I've visited. You can just show up and kind of like fake your way through it and figure out something fun to do. You don't want to let your lack of planning bite you in the butt. So we're gonna talk a bit here about how to figure out your trip, whether or not you're coming to Alaska specifically to see Denali National Park and Preserve, or whether you are planning to do it as part of a larger trip, and some options that you have based on how much time that you have in the park. Next slide, please, Valerie. Some pro tips that I will give you generally for visiting the park. Use our free shuttle service. Even if you have driven up the Alcan Highway and you plan on having your car in the park, or if you've rented a car and you just want to get out and get on your own, I highly recommend the free shuttle service that we have for the front country. It goes the first 15 miles, which is where public vehicles are allowed to drive. However, we don't have a lot of parking in that area. And so what can happen is you can get all the way out to the Savage Check Station, that 15-mile point within the park, and there's no place to park, and then you have to turn around and go back another 10 miles maybe to find parking. So we do have a free shuttle service. Depending on the time of year, your wait could be anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes, but it's not longer than 30 minutes. And it will take you to many of our stopping points where you can go. You can check out, it'll drive you to the kennels. It will take you to Mountain Vista. It'll take you to Savage. And the great thing is that a lot of the drivers on these shuttles are some of our drivers who have done our tours. So they will point out wildlife to you. They will give you some fun facts as you go along. So it's a really tremendous service. So I highly recommend when you get to the park, you park at our visitor center campus and then find a shuttle bus and take that out. It will save you a lot of parking hassle. Have your park pass ready. This is a fee park. We have a variety of fees. And I always like to mention the federal park pass program that's out there. If you're like me and you're under 62 and you don't have any military service, the annual pass is $80 a year. If you're planning on visiting a couple of parks throughout the year, it more than pays off for itself. If you're over 62, there is the lifetime senior pass that you can get for $80, and that will get you into any federal land free. All of these passes get you into any federal lands, not just national park sites, but any federal site that charges a fee, including Army Corps of Engineers sites, National Wildlife Refuge, Bureau of Land Management sites. So it really is a good deal. And there's also our Gold Star Pass and our Military Pass, and those are free passes that you can explore. So just make sure you have your park pass. You'll need it if you take any of the tours. You'll need it if you go into the park, but make sure to have your pass ready. You can buy it on site, saves you some time if you already have it. One of the cool things about Denali National Park, I'm a birder, so I go to a lot of different types of parks, and they're always like, stay on the trail, stay on the trail. At Denali, you can go off trail. You can go hike out into the wilderness. So if you find that opportunity where a driver drops you off somewhere and you can just walk on the tundra yourself, it if you're if you're a city person, it might be a little scary. Or even if you're a well-seasoned traveler and you're thinking, yeah, but this is grizzly country, I don't know if I want to do it. Do it. It is so empowering. And I have to tell you, nothing quite feels like the spongy tundra underneath your boots. So do take a minute to go off trail. Uh, Pack snacks. Always have snacks. We do have places to eat, but they can get crowded quite quickly. So just have snacks. You may have a long wait someplace. You may get caught in a bear jam, and you have to wait for a little bit. So yeah, have snacks ready to go. Dress for all sorts of weather. Um, Pretty much through May and June, we will get every type of weather every day. It will be sunny, cloudy, rainy, and snowy all in the same day. Sometimes even in the same spot. That happens at my home quite a bit. So hope for 70 degrees. On rare occasions, we even get up to 80 degrees, but definitely plan for 20 degrees. And plan for how much movement you're going to do. If you're someone who's more into taking pictures, that 20 degrees gets very cold very quickly as you're just standing in one spot for a long time. If you're hiking, keep that into consideration. Consider your layers, consider moisture wicking material as your base layer, but plan for a variety of weather. Plan for when you come. Even if it's July, there's always a chance of snow. Give moose lots of space. This is a moose that is at our entrance sign. And moose, we'll talk more about them later, but definitely you will see them all over the place. It's tempting to get a selfie with them. It's tempting that they're calm and you can get closer and closer. Do not get close to moose. They have very bad tempers and things can go south quickly. I feel like that's 70% of my job when I'm walking around headquarters in the summertime is encouraging visitors not to get so close to the moose. And it's a busy day for me if somebody gets trampled by a moose. Um, have a bear plan. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but if you're coming in and you're going to be doing some hiking, consider what your food situation is going to be. Consider how prepared you are for an accidental encounter with a grizzly bear. But we'll talk some more about those pro tips later on, but definitely have a bear plan. Plan for the unexpected. We don't know what's going to happen. We did not know in the summer of 2021 that our road was going to melt and that was going to restrict access. Sometimes what happens too is you're planning to come out to the park and you are all set to hike Savage River, and there is a grizzly bear that has eaten or that has taken down a moose or a caribou, and we have to close down that trail. And our rangers are there and we're happy to offer alternatives, but just understand that most of this park is wilderness, and wilderness is unpredictable, and we try to give you the best experience possible. So make sure to just be ready to have to shift your plans a little bit. And I guarantee you, if you have to shift your park and you have to do some of the trails around Horseshoe Lake or around Mount Healy Overlook instead of Savage River, you're still going to get spectacular views. Um, if you're taking any of the bus tours and you are planning on doing some other activities outside the park or even within the park, let's say maybe you've scheduled yourself a flight seeing tour on the same day as a bus trip. Give yourself some time with those bus trips. The tours will tell you that, oh, we expect it to be 6 hours, we expect it to be this, but things happen. Moose jams happen, bear jams happen, sheep jams happen. When these things happen, we can't control the wildlife. We can't just lightly tap our horn and encourage the wildlife to go. We try to minimize the impact that our transit system has with the wildlife in the park, and they dictate the time. So, and the drivers have a lot of stops to make. So try not to plan your trip too tightly, so that way you don't miss a flight or some other trip that you had planned. And I'm going to sound like a broken record about this and the shuttles, but use the NPS app. It really is. It's a free app. It's helpful. I have found it tremendously helpful when I'm trying to navigate where I am in the park. All right, next slide, please, Valerie. Okay, so I broke this down, and we have a handy chart on our Denali website that also gives you much more in-depth information on this. But I broke this down to how much time you might have and what you can do as you're planning your trip. So let's say that you're going to be at the Denali National Park area for a half day or less. I don't recommend this unless you are someone who is you just want to say that you have officially been to Denali National Park and Preserve and get your picture at the entrance sign. Then that's your jam. That's fine. But if you want to experience the park, this one might be a little frustrating for you. But the things that you can do in a half day is you can definitely visit the Denali Visitor Center. You can park and take some of the Horseshoe Lake Trail. That's a trail I actually love taking it quite a bit in the wintertime since I live near there. It's there's a beaver dam down there, especially in the winter. The tracks down there are incredible. It's a really great way to learn what lynx tracks look like, and horse and snowshoe hare and beaver, of course. It's also one of our more birdier spots in the park, so that's a good place to go. Connecting to that is our Rock Creek Trail, which also connects to Mount Healy Overlook. And if you want something a little more strenuous, that is a good trail to get in some good uphill steps. And then, depending on the time of day that you come, you would have a shot at doing one of our sled dog programs by taking our free shuttle there. Our sled dog demos happen 3 times a day, and the programs that are offered varies. It depends on what our dog situation is. So over the summer, when we had our 3 programs, the first 2, you got a demonstration of the dogs pulling one of our summer sleds out there. But when our puppies were born, the third program ended up being puppy races. So you never know what you're going to get there. You will definitely see some dogs. Even if you don't have, if your schedule isn't lining up to get you there in time for one of the dog demos, you can walk around our sled dog yard. And the rangers are on hand. Some of the dogs really are all about getting ear scratches or butt scratches. And so you can meet some of our dogs that way. And all of them are beautiful and funny and wacky. And rangers are happy to tell you about who their favorite dogs are and who are the very best girls and boys with when it comes to the dog. So those are some fun activities that you can do in a half day. All right. So let's say you're spending one night and you have kind of a half day and a whole day or 2 full days the next day. That gives you time to visit the Denali Visitor Center, you can take the free shuttle and go up and down the first 15 transit or tour buses. Okay, I'm just going to pause for a second. I'm getting, Valerie, a message. Can you see me okay? I just got a message that there was a connectivity issue.
I can see you. We did have a dropout. So let's maybe if you just want to restart this slide, if you that would
Yeah,
probably be
yeah,
so to
yeah.
make sure we cover it all.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks,
Okay.
thanks. So if you're doing a one night stay and you have roughly 2 full days, you have plenty of time to visit the Denali Visitor Center and see our exhibits there and explore some of the trails. That's actually not a bad place to see moose in the summertime. A lot of moose come into that area for calving season, which starts in May and goes through June. And it's a safer area in some ways for the moose because the grizzly bears don't like coming into the visitor center campus, but it does create a little havoc for us because mama moose have the shortest tempers on the planet and they will trample you. So we sometimes have to do some mitigation around there. So you can hang out there, but that's also where we have restaurants and a gift shop. You do have time too to take the free shuttle all the way out to Savage. You could take it out to Savage River. You could hike the trails around there and then take the shuttle back, stop for a dog demo if you wanted to. With a one night stay, you also have time for our transit and tour buses. And they're two very different things. If you are someone who you just want to sit back, relax, have someone point out all the caribou, all the moose, all the bears, and make sure you see them from the comfort of your bus seat and get a lot of information about the park and the history of the park, the tour buses are the way to go. If you're someone who you want a little bit of information, but really you want to get off that bus and you want to stretch your legs and you want to go for a hike, then I recommend the transit buses. And you still will get some tour information in there because all of our drivers, they know so much about the park and they're super happy to share it. And but when you go on our transit buses, you just let them know where you want to be dropped off and you can say, hey, I want to go hiking around Tatler Creek and maybe try to find some dinosaur tracks, and they'll drop you off there. And even if you need directions, like I told one of them one day, it's like, I need to get to that spot where the rock ptarmigan are, and he's like, oh, I got you, I'll drop you off there. So the tour or the transit buses are what you want to go on if you are heading out to do some hiking. Like I said, you have time for sled dog programs. If you are doing 2 days with a one night stay, you also have a chance to take our Triple Lakes Trail. We've been doing some maintenance on that, and we have some new areas. It should be completed by next year, but be prepared. There might be a little bit of a detour along there, but that's another good hike that you can do, and it's a little bit longer. And if you're doing a one night stay, you can camp at Riley Creek or a couple of other campground areas. So those are options for you too. All right, next slide. So if you're doing 2 nights, and this is even better because it gives you a lot more time in the park, you can do both a tour and a transit bus. So you can take a tour bus the first day, and then the second day head out on a transit. And I will say, even though the buses are going out to mile 43 only, that's at East Fork. We do have a contact station out there where you can ask questions. You can hike along the road. Last year, people were able to hike up to the Pretty Rocks Landslide to see it. That's not going to be an option this year because the construction company is going to start working on rebuilding the area so we can put in a bridge and get people out to Wonder Lake by vehicle, hopefully by 2025. But we have installed some stairs and they take you down to the East Fork River or the East Fork of the Tolclat River. And it's a really fun hike along a braided river. You get spectacular views of the mountains around there. There is quite a bit of wildlife that hangs out there. If you're a birder and golden eagles are your jam, that's a good spot to see them. If you're up for a particularly long hike, you can take the East Fork of the Tolclat River around for about, I think it's about 5.5 miles, and you will be able to see the Pretty Rock Slide from down that way. But again, that's going to be about a 10-mile hike front out and in. So make sure you're ready for that. But that is another place to go if you have 2 days. And again, you'll have time for sled dog programs. You can hike any of the trails if you have a 2-night stay. We also have some ranger programs. We're still hiring our seasonals for this summer, but one of the hikes that you can sign up for is our discovery hike, and you usually have to do that a day ahead of time. So you call the visitor center and see, one, do we have staff to do a discovery hike? And two, do we have space on there? And that's fun because you can go out on a transit bus and it's kind of ranger's choice where they take you. You can also, with this time, go backpacking or you can camp. Let's see. Oh, I see we have some questions. Valerie, I'm going to save the questions for the end so I can make sure to get through this. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so if you're staying 3 or more nights, now you're doing the professional ranger stay. And I took, this is one of our puppies that was born last year. This is Bosun. So if you come visit us this summer, you'll get to meet him. He is a very beautiful dog, but we dressed him up as a ranger one day. So if you have 3 or more nights, definitely you have plenty of time to hike off trail, whether you're doing it for a day or you're getting a backcountry permit to do that. You can go for one of our discovery hikes. You can go backpacking, camping. You can do both the tour and the transit bus. You can do all the shuttles. You can walk the front country trails, and this is then this is where it's excellent to check in with our Chamber of Commerce, and you can do things more than once. It's a good time. All right, next slide, please. Okay, for camping, we have several campgrounds. You don't have to make a reservation. You can just kind of show up the day of. I mean, it's not every night that every single spot is is filled. So if you're someone who's kind of like just driving through and you want to see what's available, I will say, based on the last 2 summers, I would make a reservation. Things tend to fill up sooner rather than later, or maybe the more prime nights are gone. But you can take a chance. Uh, the campgrounds that we plan on having open this year are Riley Creek, which are right in the front country. As a matter of fact, Riley Creek is open year round. I was just cross country skiing through there last week when it was -10 and ran into a family who was winter camping out there. We'll have the Savage River Campground open, Sanctuary River, Teklanika, which is out at about mile 32. Some of our campgrounds do allow for, but be aware that no campground in Denali has electrical or water hookups for your RV. Pets are allowed at campgrounds on the roads, but they are not allowed in the trails and wilderness, and they must be on leashes. And then there is a 14-night maximum for staying there. So if you really want to go hog wild and stay for 2 weeks, you can stay for 2 weeks, up to 2 weeks in a campground. Next slide, please. And then if you really want to get a unique experience in Denali, you can get a backcountry permit. And the permits are very important because it explains to you, kind of covers bear safety, really make sure everybody understands about how to properly store their food and how to set up their campgrounds. And it also goes over with you what your plan is when you're checking out the backcountry units. We'll also give you updated information just to make sure everything's still open. It's good to know where you're going if you want to do a backcountry camping trip, but it's also good to go with a backup plan because you may have a certain unit staked out and a certain route staked out, and then by the time you come to us, it's like, yeah, Grizzly took out a moose yesterday, and that route's going to be closed off. But here we'll help you figure out another way to do it, or a separate unit. So we have all of our units on our website, and you can check them out. And you're always welcome to call and get more information about that. But we will go over what your plan is before you send you out in the wilderness. Definitely consider your skill level out there. If you're someone who's just done campgrounds just outside of suburbs, not to say you can't do it, but this might be a bit more challenging, especially with some of the trails out there, the unpredictable conditions, the unpredictable weather. So definitely keep your skill level in mind. And our website has a lot of detailed information about our units, so definitely check that out. And again, there are no trails, so consider that when you're taking everything out with you. You're taking things out, and you're also going to bring it back with you. Keep in mind what your weight capacity is, and that it's not going to be an easy trail. It's going to be hiking over spongy tundra, maybe going up some mountains, maybe going through some passes. And also, if you're like me and you were a low level person until a low sea level person until you moved to Alaska, and it's like, whoa, elevation, what's this? Just keep that in mind. Next slide. I wanted to cover some bear safety tips because this is huge. One of the reasons why access to the park beyond mile 15 is in buses, it's for several reasons. Number one is to control the traffic. We don't want the situation of lines that happen in some other parks in the lower 48. We're also very conscious of wildlife management here. We're trying to minimize the impact that we have on bear, moose, and caribou. So we want the bears to be very not curious about people. A curious bear is a dangerous bear. We want bears to ignore us. This was a bear that was walking past my car one day as I was on my way to a meeting in the park. And I just found it fascinating that as the bear walked past my car that was pulled over, it made a point not to look at me. And it's like, yeah, that's the kind of bear that we like. So when you see a bear in the park, and I know we want to get great photos of them, but we do want a minimum of 300 yards away from bears. That is safe for you. That is safe for them. When you're also walking through the park, even if you haven't seen a bear yet, no matter where you are, it's good to go with a buddy because the two of you are going to talk, and your talking will alert a bear that you're there and not startle them. Startling bears is that's not a good situation, and it can lead to, especially if it's a sow with cubs, it can lead to her getting aggressive. So make noise. If I'm by myself, I just kind of randomly shout things out while I'm going. Sometimes you might hear, I've heard someone do the Swedish kulning, that shepherdess song that they do to calling cows. That's another way. So yeah, singing out to bears, or you might just hear someone just go, woo, just make noise, let the bears know that you're there. Carry bear spray. That is far more effective than the bells. It is, and know how to use bear spray. We have a video on our website that shows how to do it. When you do the backcountry, we will show you that. If you're flying up and you're like, hey, I'm not allowed to take bear spray in my carry-on, there are areas where you can rent bear spray in the park. So, but bear spray is your friend. Know how to use it. It's very effective. And also, if you are asking yourself when you're having an encounter with a bear, should I use bear spray? Chances are you should. And and the bear will sense it, and even at quite a distance go away. So bear spray is an excellent thing to have. Keep your food stored in hard containers. And this is one of the things they will go over with you in the backcountry office, is to make sure that you can set your camp up safely to not attract bears. And then there are also some bear proof food containers that they will send out with you if you do not have one. It's as much for your safety as it is for the bear's safety. And again, never approach or feed bears. Definitely don't feed bears. Keep your distance. And if you do have a close encounter with a bear, or let's say you saw a bear that kind of was looking at you, getting a little too close, even if nothing happened, but the bear got close and seemed to be interested in you, please let our rangers know. It's all part of our bear management plan. And we like to hear about bears that are maybe showing some curiosity or might be approaching people too closely. There are things that we can do to correct that behavior. Like for a while, we had a ranger who had a Karelian bear dog, and that dog's job in our park was to haze bears. So when a bear gets a little too friendly, we try to do what we can to make it a little less friendly around people. And it's good for the bear. It's safe for people. It's safer for everyone all around. So if you had a weird experience with a bear, even if you're not sure, tell a ranger, and we will get that wildlife report to Pat Owen. All right, next slide, please. Moose. Moose do not want to be your friend. I know it's they they seem gentle when they're feeding, and they look, especially when they're starting to go into velvet, they look friendly, but they turn on a dime. And so please give moose your space, at least 25 yards. If the moose ears go down, if the moose is looking at you, that is a sign you need to leave, and leave quickly. Bears might fake charge you. Moose will not fake charge. If a moose is running at you, you need to run as fast as possible. Maybe zigzag, maybe try to put a tree between you and the moose. But moose, I see it time and again of people getting too close to moose, and it's just a dangerous situation, and it's not good for anyone. So please you're far more likely to be injured by a moose than a bear in the park. So give moose lots of space and run if they start running at you. Next slide. Sled dogs in the park. Some of them do want to be your friend. Much like the rest of the wildlife in the park, don't feed them. They're on very specialized diets. But when you come in the summertime, you will see a cadre of volunteers who walk the dogs, usually in the evenings, but sometimes during the day. I'm one of those. This is the dog that I walk. Her name is Party. She is our smallest sled dog, but she's also a lead dog. And she was born during the National Park Service Centennial, and all those dogs had party themed names. So she was Party, we had Cupcake, we had Pinata. But if you see us out walking the dogs, definitely you can say hi, but ask us before you approach too closely, especially if you want to pet them. All of our dogs are different, and all of our dogs react to different things. Like Party, for example, she wants to eat everything. And I mean anything small. I mean, we get in lots of arguments of her trying to eat spruce grouse and ptarmigan when we're out on our walks. And sometimes she tries to eat moose, and that is that's just a bad idea. So sometimes, especially if someone's in the park and they're walking their dog on the park road where you're allowed to walk your dog, and they want to come up with their dog, and if the dog is quite small, Party wants to eat it. So just always, if you're going to approach, just ask us if it's okay. Some of the dogs too are very confused by children. They're used to adult humans, but children coming up to them, they're like, wait, is this one of the puppies? Do I need to roughhouse with them? So just always check with us, and we'll let you know if the dog is in the mood to be pet. When you go visit us in the kennels, when you can walk around when there's not a program, we have the dogs up front that definitely are in the mood for butt scratches that day. And some of the dogs will just come up and lean against you. So there are chances to pet the dogs. Just always check with us first when you see them on the leash. But yeah, the sled dogs are definitely a perk for working here. All right, next slide, please. Oh, I'm already at the end. Wow. So I just want to reinforce these resources again. If you want to come visit us and you're planning your trip, I just kind of threw some bare bones out there. This will give you a lot more in-depth information. So please check nps.gov/DINA, the government code for Denali National Park. You can also just Google Denali National Park, plan your visit, and that page will pop right up. But we have detailed information for just about everything. And before you go to Denali or any national park site, I highly recommend downloading the free National Park Service app. I just realized a typo I have in that. But what's really great about that app is that it will allow you to download whatever park you're visiting. So if you're inside that park and you need that information about where is that trail, am I on the right trail? Even if you don't have cell service, if you have that park downloaded in the app, you'll still be fine. You can always ask us questions at dina_info@info.nps.gov. If you can't write that down fast enough, there is an email us page, and that's the same email address that it will take us to. And if you're wondering things about, well, how do I get out to Kantishna now since the road is closed? If some lodges are open in Kantishna, but it is fly-in only now. And if you want to learn more about that, you can visit discoverdenali.org. If you want to do any of the things that are in and around outside the park or find a tour operator, discoverdenali.org is the best place to go. All right. And then I see that we have some questions.
Yep, we do. So I'm going to switch back to us. And
Okay.
just for everyone watching, those links and tips will be in the show description. So if
Great.
you didn't write it down, just scroll down and it'll be there. I will make sure that the official Park Service page is linked, and I will put that email in there. And then while you've been chatting, I've been thinking maybe I need to reach out to my friends over at Discover Denali, and we'll do a separate video for all the outside the park stuff.
That is actually a really great idea because they can talk about things I can't.
Exactly. And I know that that's the case. That's why I said
It
that
is.
right
It's
up
just
front. You know, I love to answer your hotel questions, your tour questions. That's something I can do. That's not something Sharon can do. So you can reach out to me, or I can point you to the people, or you can go to discoverdenali.org for all the outside the park stuff.
I like doing this. I like messing with my family sometimes. We're like, okay, when we're coming to visit, where should we stay? And it's like, well, as a federal employee, I can't tell you.
Riley Creek. Good luck. Make a reservation. Okay, so first of all, before we jump into the questions, you got a comment from Deb who says that she misses you on TPTMN. I don't know what that is.
Oh my gosh! So outside the park service, I'm a well-known birder, and I lived in Minnesota, and I used to do bird watching segments on this TV show called Almanac, all the local TV stations, and on public radio. So if anyone's listening to this, I'm like, wow, her voice sounds really familiar. If you've ever listened to public radio and heard a very enthusiastic woman talking about birds, and if you have any questions about birds, especially at Denali, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, I was thinking, I was like, that's probably public television in Minnesota, but I wasn't sure.
It
I wanted you
is,
to just
yeah.
make sure you saw that. So,
Aw,
okay,
thanks,
here's the
Deb.
first question that came in. It's from Megan. So, making reservations to camp within the park at the official park campgrounds, does that include your park pass fee?
That is a good question. Let me see if I can find that really quick.
Okay.
I believe it does, but I would just double check with that email that I gave you, that email address, that info email.
That's in the show description.
That's in the show description. Yeah. And I apologize. I am the public affairs officer. I'm not the person that works the front desk. And most of the TV stuff that I end up doing is about Pretty Rocks these days. So, but I'm pretty sure that is, but please just double check that with that email address.
Okay. And then Stan, saw your question. I'll come back to that at the end just because it was more about my own experiences on some of the trails. Here's one from Angela, curious, how do you make a reservation, or do you need a reservation to see the sled dog demos?
That is an excellent question. You do not need a reservation. It's you just show up and it's first come, first serve. Generally, we have about 150 people there, and we have some bleachers, and we even have like a little cover that comes over the bleachers, just in case there's a little bit of precipitation. But I will say, last year we had record attendance at one of our sled dog demos of over 400 people, and we can make it work, but you might stand. So just be prepared for that. And if you're someone who has accessibility issues and you do need to sit, our kennel staff will work to do what it takes to make sure that you can have a comfortable sled dog experience.
Perfect. Now, I was not going to show this one, not because it's not a great question, but because it's not quite park related, but because you're a birder, I'm wondering if you might know. Bruce is curious if you have a recommendation for a good lens for wildlife photography.
Oh, Bruce, I'm kind of a rebel when it comes to wildlife photography. I am a big fan of this technique called digiscoping. And so I don't have it with me at my desk right now, but I have a case that will go on my iPhone, and it attaches to my binoculars and spotting scopes. So a lot of the pictures that you saw in here were ones that I've taken, and they were all taken with my phone. And if I showed you some of my birding photos, you would be like, there's no way that was taken with a phone. But that's the way I do it. I would check in with some photography websites for more traditional lens recommendations.
Yeah, and I can say, Bruce, if you're still watching that live, that we've had several threads about it in the Alaska Travel Tips Facebook group, and I will comment down in the comments of this video. Once the video ends, I can add links down there. I'll point you to some of those threads where pros and stuff have made tons of suggestions.
So, and along those lines, because I do enjoy bird photography, and it can be a little bit of a challenge from the bus, you have a much better shot with mammal photography. We do have a shoulder season in the spring and fall at Denali. It's unpredictable. You have to be flexible. But so when the snow has melted safely enough in the spring, could be April 20th. Could be May 9th, not sure. Last couple of years, about May 1st, it's been open, but we do open up the park road to private vehicles from the entrance all the way to Teklanika, so mile 32. And that's one of the perks that I love living in the park, is that when that happens, I can drive out to Teklanika and I can go biking up to Sable Pass from there, or I can go birding. I've had tremendous experiences of videoing spruce grouse in their leks, and also fighting ptarmigan and things like that. Now, again, and it happens again in the fall. So as soon as bus season is over in mid-September, all the way up until it's too icy for us to safely maintain the road. Again, that could be September 30th, that could be October 15th. It's just, so if you're someone who wants kind of a unique experience and you can be a little flexible with your dates, planning a trip around then can be quite an interesting and fun experience. And I will say with that, it is up in the air. It's definitely not a guarantee. And then sometimes things happen like, oh, we're doing some kind of wildlife documentation here, or we're doing some kind of trapping, so you won't be able to get past the Teklanika Bridge. But it's a fun thing to do. I've picked many a blueberry that way in the park.
That is one of the great things about visiting in the fall, is the berries in the park are fantastic.
Oh, so many berries.
Yeah. Okay. So had a couple questions that came in before the stream, people who had questions they wanted to get answered. So we're going to jump over there.
Okay.
So here's one question. And again, it's an admission question.
Sure.
Someone's staying at Savage River Campground. If they return, do they have to repay admission, or is it the standard kind of like 7-day admission for Denali National Park? Once you've paid, you're good for a week?
Yeah, if they're there for the whole week, that should be fine. If they're going to be there longer, just check back in with the visitor center.
Okay, yeah, they can always answer that. Here's another question. Someone who's taking a transit bus. Any recommended places to hop on and hop off? Obviously, we talked about the fact that there really aren't any trails once you get past Savage River until you get to Kantishna, Wonder Lake area, which people can't get to on the buses this year. So maybe what are the main points of interest where one might want to set to hop off the bus and walk for a bit?
You know, there are a variety of trails. And one thing that you can do, if there's something specific that you want to try and see, like if you're like, I want to try and see rock ptarmigan, or I want to hike someplace where I might have a reasonable shot of seeing a long-tailed Jaeger, the drivers can say, oh, I have a good idea of where to drop you off. Otherwise, there are trails around Teklanika that you can take, the Teklanika campground, as long as there aren't any bears tearing stuff up at Teklanika. You can also hike along the Braided River. Any place there's a braided river is fun hiking. Braided rivers, they shift throughout the years, but they're usually like these open areas of rock that you can walk on, and you can see some really interesting geology. It's a really good way to see wildlife, because wildlife needs water. I like them too because it's a way of hiking, but I also have a lot of open areas. Some of the smaller creeks where there are willows, I don't like to hike those alone because a bear or a moose could be feeding in there. And if the wind is in the wrong direction, everybody could surprise each other, and that's not good. So any of the braided rivers are great. Tatler Creek is a lot of fun. You have a reasonable shot at pika there. Sable Pass, no, not Sable Pass. No, I would stick with Tatler Creek. If you go up, there is a shot at being able to see some dinosaur tracks, and you can read more about dinosaur tracks that have been found in our park. And of course, East Fork, that is a wide open area, and the stairs getting you all the way down to the riverbed down there. I followed along on a discovery hike there last year, and I hiked it a little bit myself. I would not do, just for my own hiking ability of being a short woman in her 40s who bike rides more than she hikes. I didn't hike all the way out to the slump, but a lot of my friends did and said it was a good view. But that is a fun area to hike, and the landscape around it, if you feel like, I don't know, like you're in a Tolkien novel.
Mm-hmm. There's a reason that it was such a bummer that that's the part of the park that the road was closed, because it's such a scenic area, but makes sense from a geologic standpoint.
I will say, my first summer, nobody really warned me. And they're like, hey, you have a meeting out at Toklat. And I'm like, okay. And I read the rules of the road on how to drive park vehicles. And then I got to Pretty Rocks, and there's no guardrail and there's nothing. And I'm just like, I can't do this. I can't do this. Wait a minute. I have to drive back and I have to be on the cliffside. And so when I got to Toklat, I talked to Dan there, who's a ranger who works out there. And he said, how was it? And I was like, I can't drive back. I live here now. And he laughed. And I was like, no, I'm dead serious. And he's like, I'll take you out and teach you how to drive this. But yeah, I don't know how the tour drivers do it. It's terrifying.
Yeah, I will say, as someone who's been up and down the park road from end to end several times, though not a park ranger, that area was due for an upgrade on the road, even if it hadn't decided to stop being a road all of a sudden.
The upside is we were already planning on it, so we were kind of far ahead of the game when the slide happened.
Yeah. All right. So here's another question, semi-related. You mentioned backcountry permits. Are those necessary for hiking or just if you're planning to do an overnight in the backcountry?
If you're planning to do an overnight in the backcountry, if you're just day hiking, you're fine.
Okay. And then here is a totally different question, and it is not specific to any given operator, but more of the sort of differences in the experience if you're flight seeing into Denali National Park. Are you familiar with the differences? Are you able to address that at all?
They are different experiences. I'm just worried about my ability to talk about them.
Okay, so how about I say it and you can say that is accurate or that is not accurate. So what I would say, here's what I would say. I would say if you're flying from Healy, which is north of Denali, your flight seeing route more or less follows the park road. But it's obviously up high above the park road. So you're kind of above the levels of the mountain. So it's got a very similar, it's actually really cool if you've already done a bus tour to go do that one, because you can kind of see the same route you've already been on, or that you're about to go on if you haven't yet. And then from Talkeetna, you're approaching the mountain from the south. And so it tends to be more completely wild landscape, not really a lot of evidence of humans there, and going into the Alaska range from the south toward the mountain. Does that sound about accurate?
That sounds accurate. And Talkeetna, I will say this too, because we have a visitor center down there, and our visitor center, they're completely different vibes. Talkeetna is very much the climbing town. And if you're going to be there in May and June, it's kind of fun to be around that visitor center or just to be in that area, because you can feel the energy from the climbers, the people who are about to do it, the people who have just finished it. And it's a very different vibe. And I think you have more opportunity for glacier exploration in Talkeetna than you do from Healy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have done, as a consumer, I've done a flight from Healy that went south to approach the typical glacier landing site that they have. It was Kahiltna Glacier, which is on the west side of the mountain, but they're south around to get there. And it was very different from a landscape perspective, a lot more mountains, a lot more glaciers underneath your plane than the one that comes in along the park road. So if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed, take a look at the Google map or whatever and follow the park road and say, okay, that's where Healy is. And then look where Talkeetna is relative to the mountain. And that'll give you a sense of the differences of the kind of geography you're going to be flying.
Yeah. The other thing is that you might see this summer still coming from Healy is that, why am I blanking on the name? We had a glacier surge that happened.
Oh, Muldrow.
Muldrow. Thank you.
Yes.
That happened around Eielson. And that was kind of cool to see that.
It was so cool. I saw it.
I saw it in 2021. And I think it's still surging. It's just I don't get as much information from the geologists about that because we've been occupied with other geological issues along the road.
Yeah, I can imagine that just the reduction in the number of people making it that far down the park road means that it's not something that's as talked about in the office.
Yeah. In 2021, that was our main story up until the road melted. And then even last year, I was like, hey, is that glacier still surging? And it was a little bit, but yeah, that would be an interesting thing to see too, that you're not going to see every year, is the surging Muldrow Glacier.
Yeah. And that's, if you're not familiar with that, basically the concept is that glacier, it's sort of like a bathtub is how I think about it. It was built up into this kind of bowl of the mountains, and all of a sudden it got enough gravity in the ice that it started to just shift much more rapidly than it normally would. So it's flowing out onto the landscape sort of northeast of the main Denali Mountain. And it's just a beautiful opportunity to see a glacier that's moving at a much faster rate than, it's much more like an ice river than the ice rivers you'll hear them described as. It's more rivery than the normal glacier. Okay, so we'll do one more question. And this is again, feel free to chime in. This was a question that came from Stan about hikes. If I have have any experience doing some of these hikes, and I do. So when I was in Denali most recently, September 21, didn't make it up last year at all. I did Savage River Loop. Great hike. And you were telling me before we started the call, Sharon, they just redid the bridge at the far end. Really great hike if you are not a hiker. Very flat, beautiful scenery, makes you feel like you're getting out there. You're going to see more people than you would on if you're out in the backcountry, but a great opportunity. I have not done the Savage Alpine Trail, which is a point-to-point, meaning that you go from one point to another. Both points are really easy to get on and off the buses, thankfully. That is a quite aggressive altitude hike. Make sure if you're hiking in Denali, you check altitude. Or I should say elevation. Elevation is the word I mean. Elevation in Alaska in general is much more aggressive than you are probably used to in the trails that are designed down here in the lower 48. Also did the part of the Rock Creek Trail, sort of got lost on it. It's not a trail you can really get lost on. It wasn't a big deal. We were very close to the visitor center campus, but it's a really nice trail that sort of follows along the park road in different parts and connects up some of the other trails. And then we did Horseshoe Lake. We were very footsore. If you could, this was all one day, by the way.
Oh, you did this all in one day?
We were very footsore by the end of that. And so we did Horseshoe Lake, which is a really lovely trail with a little bit of elevation. And as Sharon said, takes you down to where you can see a beaver dam, you can see a lake, you can go out toward the Tanana River, you can look across the river toward where the hotels are, kind of a nice view of the Denali town area. Really good wildlife opportunities. We saw ptarmigan there. We saw a river otter, which I had never seen in that part. Beavers are super common. Moose are super common in that area. So a very nice hike. If you've got sort of younger kids and you want to do a nice hike with them, I think that's a good one. It's going to work them, but you're going to feel like you're kind of out there getting a nice experience too. And you're not so far away that if you have a wildlife encounter, you are out of the area where other people are moving through, which if you've never been to Denali, you can very easily get away from everybody else, go around a hill or a corner and be completely on your own. Actually, I have one more question for you before we wrap this up. When we were there in 2021, they had rules about bear spray on the buses.
Yes.
Do you want to cover that? Because if people are wanting to go backcountry hiking and they're bringing bear spray, there's probably some particulars they need to know.
Basically, what you need to know is, generally when I'm out hiking, I have my bear spray clipped to my pants, so it's visible and easy to grab. That's where you want bear spray. On the buses, they want bear spray put away. They want it in your backpack
In your bag.
In your bag, yes, because bear spray on a bus is terrible. So that is the main thing. Like if they see you with the bear spray out, they will tell you to put the bear spray away, just pack it away. So that way there are no accidents. And I have seen accidents happen in the park, and it's a great way to ruin a trip.
It's a great way to make you have some paperwork.
Yeah, I will have some paperwork. But I do also, when you were talking about the hikes, I think you gave an excellent description of them. I've done all of them, not all in one day, but the Savage Alpine Trail, if you have an issue with heights, you might have an issue coming down. I took a family member up with me, not knowing about their height thing. It wasn't a family member, it was a date. Anyway, going up was spectacular. Going down was where I learned they had a crippling fear of heights. And I was like, oh, I feel really bad. So, and I highly recommend walking sticks or walking poles for the Savage Alpine Trail. Might not be a bad idea for Horseshoe Lake too, because it is kind of a steeper hill. If you're someone who's on the fence about hiking poles, that would be a good spot for them.
Yeah. And then I wanted to recap one more thing on the bear spray, and the reason you should not only keep it in your bag for yourself and your people who are on your bus. I heard that if you bear spray a bus, it takes it out of commission for like a while. So you're not just affecting your experience, you're affecting other people who need those buses to get in and out of the park for their own experiences. So just put it in your backpack, zip it closed, get off the bus, then you pull it out and put it on your hip.
Yeah, and I will say, when you have it, have it where it's handy. Bear spray in your backpack while you're actively hiking or while you're bike riding. I keep my bear spray either on my hip or in my personal bike. I have a little pack, and it's become a running joke with my family because my mother is convinced I'm going to be eaten by a bear while I work for Denali. But yeah, every time I take a picture, I always have to send it with the caption, "Yes, I had bear spray."
Yeah. Bear spray is one of those questions we get a lot about because people don't really know when they need it, but you did a great job of explaining it and also kind of giving some advice for how to handle it safely, because that is the main thing. If you've never used bear spray, it's very easy to use it wrong.
It is very easy to use it wrong. Some things to keep in mind is wind direction.
But what direction the nozzle is pointing, right?
Oh, yeah. And we have videos on the website. There are videos that you can find of people who are using bear spray to show what it's like. And it's amazing how far a bear can be when you spray it. And that bear is like, nope, 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 nope.
They
And
have
the
very
other thing
sensitive noses, so they are
they
very aware of that smell.
Yeah, and the other thing with bear spray too is after you deploy it, get out because the lingering aroma does attract more bears in. So it
Mm.
there that was another thing that I learned. And then the other thing too is before you get to the bear spray point, this just happened. I had to take a film crew out to Pretty Rocks last summer, and we had a drilling crew that was testing it, and the news cameraman kept saying this trip is going to be ruined if I don't get any bears on the park road. And I said, well, I can get you bears, but I can't guarantee that they'll be on the road. As soon as we got set up at the Pretty Rocks landslide and we could see the drillers on the other side of the slide, a bear came around the corner and they were busy drilling that they could not hear me yelling, there's a bear, there's a bear. So I found the person on my side of the slide and I was like, can you radio to them? Because the grizzly bear is walking around the corner towards them. And then the bear stopped at one of the poles that we had a sign on and it's scratching. And as this is happening, they finally heard our call and they saw it. And then after a few minutes after the bear got its scratches in, it started walking towards them. And all of us just started doing the hey bear. And the bear just immediately did the U-turn and said, nope, 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 nope.
Yeah.
So making yourself big and screaming hey bear is I've seen it in action. It works.
It works. It works. They don't know what it means, but they do know what it means.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. This is amazing. I always, as you can tell, if you're watching, I love chatting about Denali. I just need a professional to help keep me reined in because I could talk for an hour about Denali, but I'm not the expert on the ground living there. So thank you, Sharon. Thanks for all your bird tips. I feel like that in itself, if you're a birder, there were lots of bird gems. I'm like, that's got to be a bird. I should try and see that bird. So thank you again.
Oh, happy to help. Happy to help.
Yeah. And if you are watching, whether you're watching the replay or watching this live, don't forget you can comment. You can, the chat's going to turn off as soon as the live stream ends, but you can comment below and I'm keeping an eye on that. I get notifications and I'm going to do my very best to make sure you get answers to all your questions about Denali. If you like this video, if it was helpful for you, please like it here on YouTube. That's super important for helping other Alaska travelers find it. It's just the way the algorithms work. You know this, you've been on the internet before. Give it a like and it's gonna help serve it up so that people are getting this accurate, up-to-date information so they can plan their trips this year. And then if you've enjoyed this video or you wanna see other videos like it, please just subscribe to my channel. That helps a ton, keeps the lights on, so to speak, and it makes it so that I can keep focusing on giving you videos. And hopefully we will be back next year at the very latest to do another video preparing for next year. If you're available, Sharon, I'll be reaching out late in 2023. I hope you have an incredible summer season up in Denali. And thank you again for joining me.
Oh, my pleasure. This was a lot of fun. And yeah, I'd love to be back next year, hopefully with some updated information about the bridge.
About
And
the road.
hope I see you this summer.
Sounds good. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for joining.